What if everything you knew about a legend was just the pretty version? What if the smooth, perfect image was hiding a crack? A single, dark secret that changed everything. That's not just a question. It's the real story. This is about a man who traded concert halls for churches, sheet music for spirit, and in doing so, stumbled upon a truth so powerful it made him a millionaire. And so dangerous, they hoped you'd never hear it. We're talking about a genius. A kid who could play Mozart before he could properly ride a bike. A scholar who aced the prestigious halls of Howard University's music program. His path was set. Tuxedo, symphony, applause. The name was Richard Smallwood, and his future was written in classical notes. But fate had a different score. This is the story of the dark secret that transformed a classical pianist into a gospel millionaire. And it all starts with a sound that shouldn't have worked. The first challenge was the sound itself. Imagine the scene. The 1970s. Gospel music had its language. It was raw, it was rhythmic, it was fire and brimstone and shouting choirs. Then here comes this quiet, meticulous piano major. He heard music in geometry, in structure. He brought chords that belonged in a European cathedral into a black Pentecostal church. To the gatekeepers, it wasn't innovation. It was an invasion. It was cold. It was too white. They said he was complicating the Holy Ghost. They whispered he was using his fancy degree to look down on the raw, real sound of the soil. His own community gave him the coldest shoulder. The very people he wanted to play for didn't want what he was selling. He had the training, but he didn't have the key. He was locked out. So what did he do? He retreated. But not to quit. To forge a weapon. He formed a group, the Richard Smallwood Singers. But this wasn't just another choir. This was his laboratory. Here he could experiment. He took those complex chords, those jazz-influenced progressions, and he wrapped them in the warmest, most powerful voices he could find. He was building a bridge. Stone by stone, note by note, but a bridge between two worlds that were actively fighting each other. The classical world thought gospel was simplistic. The gospel world thought classical was soulless. Smallwood was in the middle, getting hit from both sides. The pressure was immense. Every rehearsal was a battle. Every song was a risk. Then came the first crack of light. The song was Center of My Joy. It was on that first album in 1982. This was the test. He used everything he had. The piano work was beautiful, intricate, but the feeling was pure gospel heart. And something clicked. The song started to travel, not like a wildfire, but like a slow, steady vine. It climbed the walls of those very churches that doubted him. People felt the complexity in their spirit. It was different, but it was undeniable. Proved his idea had merit. But merit doesn't pay the bills. Recognition doesn't fill a bank account. He was gaining respect, but he was a long, long way from being a millionaire. The secret was still hiding. The real turning point, the moment the secret began to whisper, came from a place of total defeat. This is critical. In the mid-90s, the landscape changed violently. A new sound exploded onto the scene. Kirk Franklin. Hip-hop beats, street slang, youth culture crashing into the sanctuary. It was a revolution. And overnight, the sophisticated, choir-driven sound Smallwood had spent 15 years perfecting sounded old, traditional, like yesterday's news. Record labels got excited by the new thing. Radio wanted the fresh beat. Smallwood watched as the genre leaped forward, and he felt left behind. The industry's message was clear: adapt or fade away. But Richard Smallwood did something shocking. He refused. In the face of this massive, trendy, money-making wave, he didn't try to make a funky beat. He didn't add a rap verse. He went deeper into his own sound. He turned inward. This was the gamble of his life. With commercial relevance slipping away, he decided to make the most uncompromisingly classical gospel album of his career. An album of pure worship. Almost no drums. Just piano, strings, and voices in prayer. He called it Adoration. Everyone thought it was career suicide. A beautiful, dignified, final note before the curtain fell. They were so wrong. because within that album was a single song. A song born not from ambition, but from personal pain. A song that came from a place of such deep struggle, he could only write it by leaning on the very techniques the world said were useless. That song was Total Praise. And that song changed everything. It wasn't just a hit. It became a universal language. It escaped gospel radio. It went into churches of every denomination, into concert halls, into graduations, into funerals. It made him a global name. But the money, the real wealth, that came from the secret inside the song. The secret he discovered when he was backed into a corner, abandoned by trends, and left with nothing but his own stubborn, classical truth. The secret wasn't in the lyrics. It was in the architecture. It was a chord progression that felt both ancient and fresh. It was the use of Hebrew. It was the mathematical precision of emotion. He had finally done it. He had found the code. The bridge was complete. And on the other side of that bridge was an audience he never dreamed of, an audience that spanned the globe across races and religions, an audience that would pay, that would buy sheet music and albums and licenses for decades. The millions started to quietly roll in. But with that money and that iconic song came a new kind of shadow, a whisper. Where did this really come from? Such perfection couldn't just appear. And the whispers were right. There was a darker, more personal cost. A story hidden behind the triumph of adoration. A story of a breaking point. What happens when the very thing that saves you also almost destroys you? We think of breakthroughs as clean moments. A light bulb flashes. Problem is solved. But for Richard Smallwood, the creation of his masterpiece, the moment he unlocked the secret to a fortune, came from a place so dark, so deeply private, that even his closest collaborators didn't see the full cost. The album Adoration wasn't just a career pivot. It was a medical necessity, a survival tactic, and the industry sharks smelled blood in the water. Let's strip away the glory for a second. The early 1990s, the pressure was a physical weight. He was trying to be a leader, a composer, a businessman in a genre that was changing faster than he could adapt. The critics from both sides, the gospel purists and the classical snobs, their voices became a constant noise in his head. And then there was the silent killer, comparison. Watching other artists, who embraced the new sounds, rise past him on the charts. The anxiety wasn't just creative. It became clinical. He has since spoken about battles with severe, debilitating depression. The kind that doesn't let you out of bed. The kind that makes a piano feel like a prison. This was the crucible. The dark secret wasn't a scandal. It was a struggle. A mental health crisis that the image-obsessed music industry of the 90s would never let him show. So he hid it. He showed up to rehearsals. He smiled for photos. But inside he was crumbling. The more successful Total Praise became, the heavier the expectation grew. He now had to be the genius who created that all the time. The demand for follow-ups, for tours, for his time was a torrent. And the very system that was making him money was also feeding the illness. It was a vicious, silent cycle. Profit on one hand, paralyzing fear on the other. This is the first layer of the real secret. The millionaire gospel icon was, in his private moments, fighting a war very few knew about. And in that war, he made a vulnerable mistake. He trusted people, with his pain and with his business. As the royalties from Total Praise began to flow, not a flood yet, but a steady, promising stream, the vultures circled. This is the ugly underbelly of gospel music, a world portrayed as all light and fellowship. Friends became managers, advisors became gatekeepers, and slowly, insidiously, Smallwood, the brilliant artist, the fragile man, signed things. He agreed to percentages. He handed over control of certain rights. He was told, "We'll handle the boring stuff, you just create." It's a story as old as the industry itself. The artist, exhausted from the emotional labor of creation, gets financially blindsided. The dark secret here is that, on the path to becoming a millionaire, he was almost stripped of his fortune before he even saw it. The climax of this hidden battle wasn't a public lawsuit or a screaming match. It was quieter and more dangerous. It was the realization that his lifeline, his song Total Praise, might be making other people rich while he was left with just the credit. He started asking questions. Simple questions about statements, about licensing deals for movies and commercials. And the answers were vague, delayed. The friendly faces became guarded. The atmosphere changed. He was being gaslit by his own team, made to feel crazy for asking where the money from his pain was going. This period, the late 90s, was the true test. He had the global fame. He had the cultural landmark. But he was on the verge of being a pauper in a palace of his own making. Then a breaking point. The stress, the betrayal, the relentless internal pressure. It culminated in a physical collapse. While details are closely held, those in the know hint at a severe health crisis. A hospitalization. His body finally said what his mind had been screaming. Stop. Everything stopped. The tours were canceled. The recordings were paused. The industry machine grinded to a halt. And in that terrifying silence, something shifted. Hitting absolute bottom forced a clarity he never had while climbing. He got help. Real, professional help for his depression. And he got ruthless. With a new, fragile strength, he began to untangle the financial web. He quietly hired forensic accountants. Real lawyers, not friend lawyers. He began the painful, meticulous process of auditing every contract, every royalty statement, every license issued for total praise. This wasn't a dramatic revenge saga. It was a slow, grueling, and lonely reclamation project. He was taking back control note by note, dollar by dollar. And what he discovered was the final, shocking piece of the secret. The money was there. It was massive. Total Praise wasn't just a church song. It was a licensing goldmine. It was in films, TV shows, graduation DVDs all over the world. It was being translated, sampled, covered. The fortune was real. But the pipeline was clogged with middlemen, with exploitative contracts, with outright theft. His classical mind, trained in precision and structure, turned its focus to this new complex score, the legal and financial framework of his own career. He realized that the secret to being a gospel millionaire wasn't just writing a hit song. It was understanding the business around the song. And he had to learn it from the ground up while healing his own spirit. This re-education changed him. It hardened him in the best ways. The gentle pianist became a shrewd CEO of his own legacy. He started his own publishing companies. He renegotiated everything. He built a team loyal to him, not to the industry system. This behind-the-scenes battle, fought in lawyers' offices and accounting rooms, is the untold reason the gospel millionaire title stuck. He didn't just earn the money. He had to go to war to recover it. And the enemy often was in his own camp. But winning that war came with a final, heartbreaking cost. Cost him relationships. Lifelong friendships that dissolved over money and control. The dark secret of wealth is that it often arrives with a receipt, and the price is paid in trust. So, by the early 2000s, he was in a paradoxical place. He was healthier mentally. He was finally securing his wealth. He was a respected legend. But he was also isolated and haunted by the betrayals. The man who wrote the world's most unifying praise song felt more alone than ever. And from this new place of secured power, but lingering pain, he made his most controversial move. He looked at the gospel industry that had both celebrated and exploited him, and he began to speak out. What do you do when you finally have everything they said you should want? The money, the fame, the legacy. You look at the machine that almost broke you, and you break the rules. In gospel music, there's an unspoken code, a code of silence. You don't air the dirty laundry. You don't talk about the business behind the blessing. You smile, you praise the Lord, and you keep the struggles quiet. Richard Smallwood, now financially secure and legend status, decided to shatter that code. And that's when he became truly dangerous to the system. He started with the truth they feared most: mental health. In interviews, carefully, he began to peel back the curtain. He didn't just say he was going through something. He named it: depression, anxiety, the crushing pressure of expectation. For an industry that sells perfect faith and instant healing, this was radical honesty. It was a shock. Older gatekeepers saw it as weakness, as tarnishing the shiny image. But to millions of people in pews feeling the same silent pain, it was a revelation. He was using his hard-won platform not just to sing, but to save. He connected his darkest period directly to the creation of Total Praise, framing the song not as a mere composition, but as a testament, a lifeline written from the pit. This vulnerability wasn't a liability anymore. It was his ultimate authority. It made the music matter more. Then he turned to the money. He never named names. He never filed a flashy lawsuit. Instead, he started talking principles. In masterclasses and lectures, especially to young artists, his message changed. It wasn't just practice your scales. It was read your contracts. He spoke about publishing rights, about licensing, about the importance of owning your masters. He used his own story, the vague statements, the misplaced trust, as a cautionary tale. For the old guard, this was worse than scandal. This was education. He was arming the next generation with the very knowledge that had been used to exploit him, was breaking the cycle. And in the quiet, paneled offices of industry executives, this was the most threatening act of all. A gospel millionaire was teaching gospel artists how to become millionaires themselves, and cutting out the middleman. This phase of his life, from the 2000s onward, is the final, mature form of The Secret. The Secret wasn't a single event. It was that true power comes from integrating your broken pieces, not hiding them. His classical training gave him the craft. His gospel heart gave him the soul. His depression gave him the depth. And his financial betrayal gave him the street smarts. He fused it all. He became untouchable because he was no longer just an artist. He was an architect of his own entire world. The climax of this entire journey, the key moment that proves the dark secret was actually a light, happened in 2021. The world was in lockdown. Fear was global. And a 74-year-old Richard Smallwood sat down at his piano at home. He didn't have a studio. He didn't have his full choir. He filmed a simple video for YouTube. He played Total Praise. Alone. His voice, older now, a little weathered, but impossibly clear. The performance was stripped bare. Just the man and the song that saved him. That video didn't just go viral. It became a digital cathedral. Millions of views. Comments filled with stories of grief, of fear, of isolation. In that moment, he wasn't a millionaire or a legend or a scholar. He was a fellow human, offering the only thing he had, the song born from his own past pain. He had come full circle. The wealth, the fame, the business, it all faded away. What remained was the pure, uncut truth of his journey. And that was priceless. So, what was the dark secret that turned a classical pianist into a gospel millionaire? It wasn't one thing. It was a recipe. First, the secret of fusion. He dared to mix what the world said didn't belong together, the concert hall and the church, and created a new sound. Second, the secret of depth. His greatest hit wasn't born from happiness, but from a private struggle with mental health. The pain was the fuel. Third, the secret of ownership. He learned that talent isn't enough. You must own the system or the system will own you. He had to fight to reclaim the fortune his music created. And finally, the secret of testimony. He broke the code of silence. He used his hard-won security to talk about the struggles everyone hides, transforming his personal pain into a public ministry that cemented his legacy far beyond money. The story of Richard Smallwood teaches us that a dark secret doesn't have to be a scandal. Sometimes it's just the truth they aren't ready for. The truth that your deepest weakness can become your greatest strength if you face it. The truth that the most powerful praise often comes from the deepest pain. He didn't just get rich. He got real. And in a world of facades, that's the most shocking thing of all. If the story of hidden struggle and ultimate triumph changed your perspective, show the algorithm you want more content like this video, and subscribe right now for the untold stories behind the legends you thought you knew.